Hi. It's Wednesday. It is April 1st. So we are celebrating our first reading as this new group, the way it lives right now. We did April 2nd, 2025. So we are, hello, we are 52 weeks in. This is awesome. We have made it a full year. Um, I was just shutting the door. Um, yeah, we've been doing this for a full year. I was so wrong. Uh, Absolutely wrong. So I guess it's a good thing that Facebook Memories exists. Um, because yeah, I had our weeks wrong. I thought we didn't start until May. So this is very exciting. Um, I did make a post earlier this week. There are some people who are doing so much behind the scenes that you guys can't see. You do see them in the chat, but that is my folks, my sister, my amazing partner, my daughter right there. Hey, um, who honestly, way back when the first go round of this in 2020, she was right there, popping in and out sometimes. So yeah, having her pop in here is awesome. If you guys are new here, like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. Please share it to your Facebook, to your Instagram, to if you guys know how to duet stuff on TikTok, because I don't. And there's like a moment. Very true. Ashley said, "You never know when I'll pop up." Dun dun dun. Um, I changed some fonts. I changed the little thingies. I put our little logo in the. It's my lower right corner, so I don't know. This is my award speech. I might not ever get an award, so I need to thank you guys while I can and while I know that you are watching, because I am. I am so incredibly grateful. And I know I a lot, and it is so unprofessional, but that is this channel. I'd like to thank the. Okay, so this is kind of a big deal that heavy listening is here. I'm going to assume the launch went off without a hitch because they make a very nice backpack. Yeah. um, but yeah, I wasn't sure that heavy listening was going to be joining us right at the beginning, because there was a launch at 6:30. But I knew you'd have plenty of time, and I'm grateful for you too, because heavy listening and I just met each other within the last couple of years, and he is so supportive and helped us with our Irish fairy tales. We have Irish ghost stories that I'm going to look and see how many weeks it'll cover up until Halloween. So we'll definitely do the Irish ghost stories this fall. I did a little live like 20 minutes ago on YouTube just to remind people that we were hanging out tonight. And so I gave them a little bit of a spoiler. Originally, when I put together everything for tonight, because we have just one Ambrose Beers. I think it's Beers. It might be Beers. I'm not really sure. Only one of his stories in our wonderful book. So I was trying to figure out how to fill the time. And I had originally thought of doing an Emily Dickinson poem, but I couldn't find any that was decent length and not sad. Don't get me wrong. On a sad day, that's a good book. That's some good reading. But yeah, we can't do sad tonight. So we're going to do that story in here. And then, so I was trying to figure out rambly moment. Just go with me. I promise. I can't promise this. I think it'll be worth it. So I found a while ago in my searches for things I found this book, the Oxford Book of Gothic Tales. And in going through the table of contents, there is another Ambrose Bierce story in this book. So just weirdness, universe giving me things. So we actually have two stories by a new to me author. I don't know if he is new to you guys. If so, we're all going to get introduced. If you know him, then hopefully I will do him justice by reading his stories tonight. But yeah, I'm just really excited to be with you guys again. It's so nice to have this to look forward to. And I hope you guys feel that way too. So, any minimal more ado. We got snoring dogs, just a soda tonight because I was dinking around making Facebook videos and did not get more ready. But anyway, we've got two stories tonight from a new author. I hope you guys are here, settled in. Please keep up in the chat, say hey, because I love seeing you guys. And yeah, so our first story from our new author, Ambrose Bierce, is An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. So I hope you guys like it. A man stood upon a railroad bridge in northern Alabama, looking down into the swift water 20 feet below. The man's hands were behind his back, the wrists bound with a cord. A rope closely encircled his neck. It was attached to a stout cross timber above his head, and the slack fell to the level of his knees. Some loose boards laid upon the ties supporting the rails of the railway. Some loose boards laid upon the ties supporting the rails of the railway supplied a footing for him and his executioners. Two private soldiers of the Federal Army, directed by a sergeant who in civil life may have been a deputy sheriff. At a short remove upon the same temporary platform was an officer in the uniform of his rank, armed. He was a captain. A sentinel at each end of the bridge stood with his rifle in the position known as support, that is to say, vertical in front of the left shoulder, the hammer resting on the forearm, thrown straight across the chest, a formal and unnatural position, enforcing an erect carriage of the body. Sorry, guys, I didn't know this was going to be topical-ish. It did not appear to be the duty of these two men to know what was occurring at the center of the bridge. They merely blockaded the two ends of the foot planking that traversed it. Beyond one of the sentinels, nobody was in sight. The railroad ran straight away into a forest for 100 yards, then curving was lost to view. Doubtless there was an outpost farther along. The other bank of the stream was open ground, a gentle slope topped with a stockade of vertical tree trunks, loopholed for rifles with a single embrasure through which protruded the muzzle of a brass cannon commanding the bridge. Midway up the slope, between the bridge and the fort, were the spectators. A single company of infantry in line at parade rest, the butts of their rifles on the ground, the barrels inclining slightly backward against the right shoulder, the hands crossed upon the stock. A lieutenant stood at the right of the line, the point of his sword upon the ground, his left hand resting upon his right. Excepting the group of four at the center of the bridge, not a man moved. The company faced the bridge, staring stonily, motionless. The sentinels, facing the banks of the stream, might have been statues to adorn the bridge. The captain stood with folded arms, silent, observing the work of his subordinates, but making no sign. Death is a dignitary who, when he comes announced, is to be received with formal manifestations of respect, even by those most familiar with him. In the code of military etiquette, silence and fixity are forms of deference. The man who was engaged in being hanged was apparently about 35 years of age. He was a civilian, one might judge from his habit, which was that of a planter. His features were good: a straight nose, firm mouth, broad forehead from which his long, dark hair was combed straight back, falling behind his ears to the collar of his well-fitting frock coat. He wore a mustache and pointed beard, but no whiskers. His eyes were large and dark gray, and had a kindly expression which one would hardly have expected in one whose neck was in the hemp. Evidently, this was no vulgar assassin. The liberal military code makes provisions for hanging many kinds of persons, and gentlemen are not excluded. The preparations being complete, the two private soldiers stepped aside, and each drew away the plank upon which he had been standing. The sergeant turned to the captain, saluted, and placed himself immediately behind that officer, who in turn moved apart one pace. These movements left the condemned man and the sergeant standing on the two ends of the same plank, which spanned three of the cross sides of the bridge. Balancing act. The end upon which the civilian stood almost, but not quite, reached a fourth. This plank had been held in place by the weight of the captain. It was now held by that of the sergeant. At a signal from the former, the latter would step aside, the plank would tilt, and the condemned man go down between two ties. The arrangement commended itself to his judgments as simple and effective. His face had not been covered, nor his eyes bandaged. He looked a moment at his unsteadfast footing, then let his gaze wander to the swirling water of the stream racing madly beneath his feet. A piece of dancing driftwood caught his attention, and his eyes followed it down the current. How slowly it appeared to move. What a sluggish stream. He closed his eyes in order to fix his last thoughts upon his wife and children. The water, touched to gold by the early sun, the brooding mists under the banks at some distance down the stream, the fort, the soldiers, the piece of drift, all had distracted him. And now he became conscious of a new disturbance. Striking through the thought of his dear ones was sound, which he could neither ignore nor understand. A sharp, distinct, metallic percussion like the stroke of a blacksmith's hammer upon the anvil. It had the same ringing quality. He wondered what it was, and whether immeasurably distant or nearby. It seemed both. Its recurrence was regular, but as slow as the tolling of a death knell. He awaited each new stroke with impatience, and he knew not why, apprehension. The intervals of silence grew progressively longer. The delays became maddening. With their greater frequency, the sounds increased in strength and sharpness. They hurt his ears like the thrust of a knife. He feared he would shriek. What he heard was the ticking of his watch. He unclosed his eyes and saw again the water below him. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. If I could free my hands, he thought, I might throw off the noose and spring into the stream. By diving, I could evade the bullets, and swimming vigorously to reach the bank, take to the woods, and get away home. My home, thank God, is as yet outside their lines. My wife and little ones are still beyond the invaders' farthest advance. As these thoughts, which have here to be set down in words, were flashed in the doomsman brain rather than evolved from it, the captain nodded to the sergeant. The sergeant stepped aside. Oh, okay. It's broken into little parts. So that was part one. Part two. Peyton Farquhar was a well-to-do planter of an old and highly respected Alabama family. Being a slave owner, and like other slave owners, a politician, he was naturally an original secessionist and ardently devoted to the Southern cause. The Southern cause. Circumstances of an imperious nature, which it is unnecessary to relate here, had prevented him from taking service with that gallant army which had fought the disastrous campaigns ending with the fall of Corinth. And he chafed under the inglorious restraint, longing for the release of his energies, the larger life of the soldier, the opportunity for distinction. That opportunity, he felt, would come as it comes to all in wartime. Meanwhile, he did what he could. No service was too humble for him to perform in the aid of the South. No adventure too perilous for him to undertake if consistent with the character of a civilian who was at heart a soldier, and who in good faith and without too much qualification assented to at least a part of the frankly villainous dictum that all is fair in love and war. Oh, love isn't fair and war isn't holy. One evening, while Farquhar and his wife were sitting on a rustic bench near the entrance to the grounds, a gray-clad soldier rode up to the gate and asked for a drink of water. Mrs. Farquhar was only too happy to serve him with her own white hands. While she was fetching the water, her husband approached the dusty horseman and inquired eagerly for news from the front. I bet he did. "The Yanks are repairing the railroads," said the man, "are getting ready for another advance. They reached Owl Creek Bridge, put it in order, and built a stockade on the north bank. The commandant has issued an order, which is posted everywhere, declaring that any civilian caught interfering with the railroad, its bridges, tunnels, or trains, will be summarily hanged. I saw the order." "How far is it to the Owl Creek Bridge?" Farquhar asked. "About 30 miles. "Is there no force on this side of the creek?" "Only a picket post half-mile out on the railroad, and a single sentinel at this end of the bridge." "Suppose a man, a civilian and student of hanging, should elude the picket post and perhaps get the better of the sentinel," said Farquhar, smiling. "What could he accomplish?" The soldier reflected. "I was there a month ago," he replied. I observed that the flood of last winter had lodged a great quantity of driftwood against the wooden pier at this end of the bridge. It is now dry and would burn like tinder." The lady had now brought the water, which the soldier drank. He thanked her ceremoniously, bowed to her husband, and rode away. An hour later, after nightfall, he repassed the plantation, going northward in the direction from which he had come. He was a Federal scout. Section 3. As Peyton Farquhar fell straight downward through the bridge, he lost consciousness and was as one already dead. He fainted. From this state he was awakened, ages later it seemed to him, by the pain of a sharp pressure upon his throat, followed by a sense of suffocation. Keen, poignant agonies seemed to shoot from his neck downward through every fiber of his body and limbs. These pains appeared to flash along well-defined lines of ramification and to beat with an inconceivably rapid periodicity. They seemed like streams of pulsating fire, heating him to an intolerable temperature. As to his head, he was conscious of nothing but a feeling of fullness, of congestion. These sensations were unaccompanied by thought. The intellectual part of his brain was already effaced. He had power only to feel, and feeling was torment. He was conscious of motion, encompassed in a luminous cloud of which he was now merely the fiery heart without material substance. He swung through unthinkable arcs of oscillation, like a vast pendulum. Then all at once, with terrible suddenness, the light about him shot upward with the noise of a loud splash. A frightful roaring was in his ears, and all was cold and dark. The power of thought was restored. He knew that the rope had broken and he had fallen into the stream. There was no additional strangulation. The noose about his neck was already suffocating him and kept the water from his lungs. To die of hanging at the bottom of a river, the idea seemed to him ludicrous. He opened his eyes in the darkness and saw above him a gleam of light. But how distant, how inaccessible. He was still sinking, for the light became fainter and fainter until it was a mere glimmer. Then it began to grow and brighten, and he knew that he was rising toward the surface. Knew it with reluctance, for he was now very comfortable. To be hanged and drowned, he thought, that is not so bad, but I do not wish to be shot. No, I will not be shot. That is not fair. Sorry, guys, we're going to pause for just a moment. We've got a couple of new comments. My dad's here. And Miss Kelly's here. Don't ever be sad to be late. I love when you guys are here, no matter what time you jump in. He was not conscious of an effort, but a sharp pain in his wrist apprised him that he was trying to free his hands. He gave the struggle his attention as an idler might observe the feat of a juggler without interest in the outcome. What splendid effort! What magnificent, what superhuman strength! Ah, that was a fine endeavor. Bravo! The cord fell away. His arms parted and floated upward, the hands dimly seen on each side in the growing light. He watched them with a new interest as first one and then the other pounced upon the noose at his neck. They tore it away and thrust it fiercely aside, its undulations resembling those of a water snake. Put it back! Put it back! He thought he shouted these words to his hands, for the undoing of the noose had been succeeded by the direst pang that he had not yet experienced, or that he had yet experienced. His neck ached horribly. His brain was on fire. His heart, which had been fluttering faintly, gave a great leap, trying to force itself out of his mouth. The whole body was racked and wrenched with an insupportable anguish. But his disobedient hands gave no heed to the command. They beat the water vigorously with quick, downward strokes, forcing him to the surface. He felt his head emerge. His eyes were blinded by the sunlight. His chest expanded convulsively, and with a supreme and crowning agony, his lungs engulfed a great draught of air, which instantly he expelled in a shriek. Yeah. He was now in full possession of his physical senses. They were indeed preternaturally keen and alert. Something in the awful disturbance of his organic system had so exalted and refined them that they made record of things never before perceived. He felt the ripples upon his face and heard their separate sounds as they struck. He looked at the forest on the bank of the stream, saw the individual trees, the leaves, and the veining of each leaf. He saw the very insects upon them, the locusts, the brilliant bodied flies, the gray spiders stretching their webs from twig to twig. He noted the prismatic colors and all the dewdrops upon a million blades of grass, the humming of the gnats that danced upon the eddies of the stream, the beating of the dragonfly's wings, the strokes of the water spider's legs, like oars which had lifted their boat. All those made audible music. A fish slid along beneath his eyes, and he heard the rush of its body parting the water. He had come to the surface, facing down the stream. In a moment, the visible world seemed to wheel slowly round, himself the pivotal point, and he saw the bridge, the fort, the soldiers upon the bridge, the captain, the sergeant, the two privates, his executioners. They were in silhouette against the blue sky. They shouted and gesticulated, pointing at him. The captain had drawn his pistol, but did not fire. The others were unarmed. Their movements were grotesque and horrible, their forms gigantic. Suddenly, he heard a sharp report, and something struck the water smartly within a few inches of his head, spattering his face with spray. He heard a second report and saw one of the sentinels with his rifle at his shoulder, a light cloud of blue smoke rising from the muzzle. The man in the water saw the eye of the man on the bridge gazing into his own through the sights of the rifle. He observed it was a gray eye and remembered having read that gray eyes were keenest and that all famous marksmen had them. Nevertheless, this one missed. A counter swirl had caught Farquhar and turned him half round. He was again looking at the forest on the bank opposite the fort. The sound of a clear, high voice in a monotonous sing-song now rang out behind him and came across the water with a distinctness that pierced and subdued all other sounds, even the beating of the ripples in his heart, or in his ears, excuse me. Although no soldier, he had frequented camps enough to know the dread, significance of that deliberate, drawling, a spirited chant. The lieutenant on shore was taking a part in the morning's work. How coldly and pitilessly, with what an even, calm intonation, presaging and enforcing tranquility in the men, with what accurately measured interval fell those cruel words. Company. Attention. Shoulder arms. Ready. Aim. Fire. Farquhar dived as deeply as he could. The water roared in his ears like the voice of Niagara, yet he heard the dull thunder of the volley, and rising again toward the surface meant shining bits of metal, singularly flattened, oscillating slowly downward. Some of them touched him on the face and hands, then fell away, continuing their descent. One lodged between his collar and neck. It was uncomfortably warm, and he snatched it out. As he rose to the surface, gasping for breath, he saw that he had been a long time underwater. He was perceptibly further downstream, nearer to safety. The soldiers had almost finished reloading. The metal ramrods flashed all at once in the sunshine as they were drawn from the barrels, turned in the air, and thrust into their sockets. The two sentinels fired again, independently and ineffectually. Sorry, guys, my back is killing me, and it won't crack. It won't crack. Help. The hunted man saw all this over his shoulder. He was now swimming vigorously with the current. His brain was as energetic as his arms and legs, he thought with the rapidity of lightning. The officer, he reasoned, will not make that martinet's error a second time. It is as easy to dodge a volley as a single shot. He's probably already given the command to fire at will. God help me, I cannot dodge them all. An appalling splash within 2 yards of him was followed by a loud, rushing sound, diminuendo, which seemed to travel back through the air to the fort and died in an explosion which stirred the very river to its depths. A rising sheet of water curved over him, fell down upon him, blinded him, strangled him. The cannon had taken a hand in the game. As he shook his head free from the commotion of the smitten water, he heard the deflected shot humming through the air ahead, and in an instant it was crackling and smashing the branches in the forest beyond. Oh my! They will not do that again, he thought. The next time they will use a charge of grape. I must keep my eye upon the gun. The smoke will apprise me. The report arrives too late and lags behind the missile. That is a good gun. Suddenly, he felt himself whirled round and round, spinning like a top. The water, the banks, the forests, the now distant bridge, fort, and men, all were commingled and blurred. Objects were represented by their colors only. Circular, horizontal streaks of color, that was all he saw. He had been caught in a vortex. It was being whirled on with a velocity of advance and gyration that made him giddy and sick. Oh, yeah. Ugh. In a few moments, he was flung upon the gravel at the foot of the left bank of the stream, the southern bank, and behind a projecting point which concealed him from his enemies. The sudden arrest of his motion, the abrasion of one of his hands on the gravel, restored him, and he wept with delight. I probably would have vomited first. Get caught in the water like this, and then, yeah, there would have been a moment. He dug his fingers into the sand, threw it over himself in handfuls, and audibly blessed it. It looked like diamonds, rubies, emeralds. He could think of nothing beautiful which it did not resemble. The trees upon the bank were giant garden plants. He noted a definite order in their arrangement, inhaled the fragrance of their blooms. A strange roseate light shone through the spaces among their trunks, and the wind and the wind made in their branches the music of aeolian harps. He had not wished to perfect his escape. He was content to remain in that enchanting spot until retaken. A whiz and a rattle of grape shot among the branches high above his head roused him from his dream. The baffled cannoneer had fired him a random farewell. He sprang to his feet, rushed up the sloping bank, and plunged into the forest. Yeah, he wasn't content to sit there till he got recaptured. All that day he traveled, laying his course by the rounding sun. The forest seemed interminable. Nowhere did he discover a break in it, not even a woodsman's road. He had not known that he lived in so wild a region. There was something uncanny in the revelation. By nightfall, he was fatigued, footsore, famished. The thought of his wife and children urged him on. At last, he found a road which led him in what he knew to be the right direction. It was as wide and straight as a city street, yet seemed untraveled. No fields bordered it, no dwelling anywhere. Not so much as the barking of a dog suggested human habitation. The black bodies of the trees formed a straight wall on both sides, terminating on the horizon in a point, like a diagram in a lesson in perspective. Overhead, as he looked up through this rift in the wood, shone great golden stars, looking unfamiliar and grouped in strange constellations. He was sure they were arranged in some order which had a secret and malign significance. The wood on either side was full of singular noises, among which, once, twice, and again, he distinctly heard whispers in an unknown tongue. His neck was in pain, and lifting his hand to it, found it horribly swollen. He knew that it had a circle of black where the robe had bruised it. His eyes felt congested. He could no longer close them. Sorry, guys. I don't want to guess. I don't want to guess. His tongue was swollen with thirst. He relieved its fever by thrusting it forward from between his teeth into the cold air. How softly the turf had carpeted the untraveled avenue. He could no longer feel the roadway beneath his feet. Doubtless, despite his suffering, he had fallen asleep while walking, for now he sees another scene. Perhaps he has merely recovered from a delirium. He stands at the gate of his own home. All is as he left it, and all bright and beautiful in the morning sunshine. He must have traveled the whole night. As he pushes open the gate and passes up the wide white walk, he sees a flutter of female garments. His wife, looking fresh and cool and sweet, steps down from the veranda to meet him. At the bottom of the steps, she stands waiting, with a smile of ineffable joy, an attitude of matchless grace and dignity. Oh, how beautiful she is. He springs forward with extended arms. As he is about to clasp her, he feels a stunning blow upon the back of his neck. A blinding white light blazes all about him with a sound like the shock of a cannon. Then all is darkness and silence. Peyton Farquhar was dead. His body, with a broken neck, swung gently from side to side beneath the timbers of the Owl Creek Bridge. I wonder if you do have hallucinations like that. Probably if you're hung, if your neck doesn't snap right away. I would imagine the lack of oxygen causes hallucinations. But to hallucinate that you escaped, or maybe you did escape and they got him back. I don't know. So we have the other book. I never thought I would pass the Bram Stoker story. But the next story in Our World's Greatest is Dracula's Guest, which was the start of this year. And I just think it's neat that it's in the book next to tonight's story. So yeah, that was something. I do wonder, like I say, I do wonder if you hallucinate. I luckily, even with all the craziness in my life, have not had a near-death experience, as far as I know. I have been under anesthesia, but I don't remember anything from that. I guess, thankfully. I don't know. Sorry, random tangent from Katie. You get two tonight. That's amazing. Actually, is that three? Maybe. Um, so the next story from our author, Ambrose Bierce, is a short one. Um, but I was just excited to find that we had a second one in a completely unrelated book. I guess not unrelated, but so I love the Theory of the Great Magnet. I do. Um, and I believe this is probably about my tangents or about the stories themselves. But at Ward, Karen J is my sister. And oh, this book came to us courtesy of her. So, yes. But our other story, again, it's very short, but I was just excited to find it. So we'll read it together. It is called A Vine on a House. About 3 miles from the little town of Norton in Missouri, on the road leading to Maysville, stands an old house that was last occupied by a family named Harding. Since 1886, no one has lived in it, nor is anyone likely to live in it again. Time and the disfavor of persons dwelling thereabouts are converting it into a rather picturesque ruin. An observer unacquainted with its history would hardly put it into the category of haunted houses. Yet in all the region round, such is its evil reputation. Its windows are without glass, its doorways without doors. There are wide breaches in the shingle roof, and for lack of paint, the weatherboarding is a dun gray. But these unfailing signs of the supernatural are partly concealed and greatly softened by the abundant foliage of a large vine overrunning the entire structure. This vine, of a species which no botanist has ever been able to name, has an important part of the story of the house. The Harding family consisted of Robert Harding, his wife Matilda, Miss Julia Went, who was her sister, and 2 young children. Robert Harding was a silent, cold-mannered man who made no friends in the neighborhood and apparently cared to make none. He was about 40 years old, frugal and industrious, and made a living from the little farm which is now overgrown with brush and brambles. He and his sister, he and his sister-in-law were rather tabooed by their neighbors, who seemed to think that they were seen too frequently together. Not entirely their fault, for at these times they evidently did not challenge observation. The moral code of rural Missouri is stern and exacting. Well, bet. I would just bet. Mrs. Harding was a gentle, sad-eyed woman lacking a left foot. Lacking a left foot. Oh, okay. At some time in 1884, it became known that she had gone to visit her mother in Iowa. That was what her husband said in reply to inquiries, and his manner of saying it did not encourage further questioning. She never came back. And 2 years later, without selling his farm or anything that was his, or appointing an agent to look after his interests, or removing his household goods, Harding, with the rest of the family, left the country. Nobody knew whither he went. Nobody at that time cared. Naturally, whatever was movable about the place soon disappeared, and the deserted house became haunted in the manner of its kind. One summer evening, 4 or 5 years later, The Reverend J. Gruber of Norton and a Maysville attorney named Hyatt met on horseback in front of the Harding place, having business matters to discuss. They hitched their animals and, going to the house, sat on the porch to talk. Some humorous reference to the somber reputation of the place was made and forgotten as soon as it was uttered, and they talked of their business affairs until it grew almost dark. The evening was oppressively warm, the air stagnant. Presently, both men started from their seats in surprise. A long vine that covered half the front of the house and dangled its branches from the edge of the porch above them was visibly and audibly agitated, shaking violently in every stem and leaf. "We shall have a storm," Hyatt exclaimed. Gruber said nothing, but silently directed the other man's attention to the foliage of adjacent trees, which showed no movement. Even the delicate tips of the boughs silhouetted against the clear sky were motionless. They hastily passed down the steps to what had been a lawn and looked upward at the vine, whose entire length was now visible. It continued in violent agitation, yet they could discern no disturbing cause. "Let us leave," said the minister, and leave they did. Forgetting that they had been traveling in opposite directions, they rode away together. They went to Norton, where they related their strange experience to several discreet friends. The next evening, at about the same hour, accompanied by two others whose names are not recalled, they were again on the porch of the Harding house, and again the mysterious phenomenon occurred. The vine was violently agitated while under the closest scrutiny from root to tip, nor did their combined strength applied to the trunk serve to still it. After an hour's observation, they retreated, no less wise, it is thought, than when they had come. No great time was required for these singular facts to rouse the curiosity of the entire neighborhood. Oh, yeah. By day and by night, crowds of persons assembled at the Harding house seeking a sign. It does not appear that any found it. Yet so credible were the witnesses mentioned that none doubted the reality of the manifestations to which they testified. By either a happy inspiration or some destructive design, it was one day proposed, nobody appeared to know from whom the suggestion came, of course not, to dig up the vine, and after a good deal of debate, this was done. Nothing was found but the root, yet nothing could have been more strange. For 5 or 6 feet from the trunk, which had at the surface of the ground a diameter of several inches, it ran downward, single and straight, into a loose friable earth. Then it divided and subdivided into rootlets, fibers, and filaments, most curiously interwoven. When carefully freed from the soil, they showed a singular formation. In their ramifications and doublings back upon themselves, they made a compact network, having in size and shape an amazing resemblance to the human figure. Oh! Head, trunk, and limbs were there. Even the fingers and toes were distinctly defined, and many professed to see in the distribution and arrangement of the fibers in the globular mass representing the head a grotesque suggestion of a face. The figure was horizontal. The smaller roots had begun to unite at the breast. In point of resemblance to the human form, this image was imperfect. At about 10 inches from one of the knees, the cilia forming that leg had abruptly doubled backward and inward upon their course of growth. The figure lacked the left foot. What? There was but one inference, the obvious one, But in the ensuing excitement, as many courses of action were proposed as there were capable counselors, the matter was settled by the sheriff of the county, who, as the lawful custodian of the abandoned estate, ordered the root replaced and the excavation filled with the earth that had been removed. Yeah. Yeah, it's cursed. Put it back. Later inquiry brought out only one fact of relevancy and significance. Mrs. Harding never visited her relatives in Iowa, nor did they know that she was supposed to have done so. Of Robert Harding and the rest of his family, nothing is known. The house retains its evil reputation, but the replanted vine is as orderly and well-behaved a vegetable as a nervous person could wish to sit under of a pleasant night. When the katydids grate out their immemorial revelation, and the distant whippoorwill signifies his notion of what ought to be done about it. Oh my gosh! Oh, see? Well, that would be bad advice to give, so we're just not going to give that advice. Yeah, sorry, my back really hurts. This is actually kind of helping a little bit. But thank you guys again for hanging out with me on a Wednesday night. We are on the second channel at 7:30 tomorrow. And it is March, so I can officially announce the name of the podcast is the Hallowed Hearth Podcast. It is me, Rachel Ravensvale, Haley Hansen. We are doing cryptids for the month of April, so look for the Hallowed Hearth Podcast on YouTube as well. And check that out. We are going to talk Dogman tomorrow night, which I don't know anything about. I'm loving cryptids stuff, so I'm like having so much fun with this podcast. I'm learning, just learning. So I'm going to get off of here. I'm going to take a couple Tylenol because this really hurts, and I don't know why. But anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. If you did not get a chance to chat during live, like if you're watching this tomorrow, do comment. I get notifications. Thank you, Kelly. Kelly's another one who has just come into my life in the last couple of years, and she's amazing. So, but yes, you guys, thank you so much. I'm going to get distracted by this and just keep rambling, but I'll talk to you guys either tomorrow on the KT 3.14 YouTube or next Wednesday right here at 7:30. You guys have some short stories or some authors you want me to read, send them my way, and I'll see you guys soon.